for our last occasion, how to beat disease. We have touched on many diseases over the week, and so what I thought I would do is, given that I've been talking about these color systems, these life colors, why don't we just do a recap, a brief summary for those of you who may have missed certain days, and just touch on certain areas and how we can beat different diseases. I will remind you, when we started, I talked about how COVID affected people. We were told that over 99% of the people that died from COVID had at least one underlying disease. And that's a good example of, you know what, if you have an underlying disease, you may think you can get through life okay, but when a big insult comes, we don't survive. So what we want to do is get to a place where we can not just prevent disease, but even if we have it, can we reverse it? So what I thought I would do is show you at least one topic, one tip I can give you for each disease. One tip. We have limited time, so I can only give you one, but it's a brief summary of what we have done during the week. So let's start with the heart. One tip I can give you, if you want to reverse or prevent heart disease, it's simple. Have a healthy plant-based diet. All the research tells us this. Now, some of you may want to question it about this keto diet and heavy meat diet. I can guarantee you, if you want to reverse heart disease, which is still the biggest killer, the best thing you can do is increase the amount of plant material in your diet. It says there it can reduce it by 40%. Much research tells us you can reduce it by 80 to 90%. And as I mentioned, when I was working at Cambridge doing cardiothoracic surgery, rather than have an operation to open up the arteries to the heart, what you can do is simply change your diet. It is that simple. If you don't believe me, I can even now there's so much research you can Google it. So if you want to reverse heart disease, the one tip I'll give you is to take a plant-based diet. Moving on from that, high blood pressure. We all know people with high blood pressure. Greens, greens, greens. The more greens you have in your diet, the more your arteries will open, the more your blood will flow to your heart, it will flow to your brain. And remember, I told you those greens are giving you that natural Viagra, gentlemen. Natural Viagra. If the gentlemen are not listening, the ladies certainly are. Those greens, they stimulate the arteries to release nitric oxide, which is the active ingredient of Viagra. So rather than just jumping for that pill, jump for the greens. That's high blood pressure. Cancer. What one thing can I tell you about cancer that I can give you to take away? Well, the thing is, try to spice up your life. Spice up your... Do you like spices? We like spicy food. You know, spices are like gold dust. I mean, they're so good for our bodies. Full of these things called antioxidants. You take a spice like turmeric, probably the most powerful antioxidant that we can take. Now, what does that mean? We all talk about antioxidants. Well, what does it mean? Oxidation inside of our bodies, think of it like rust on metal. That's the oxidation of metal. Oxidation inside causes a lot of damage. It can damage our DNA. If it damages the DNA, that increases the risk of cancer. Turmeric, the natural antioxidant, can prevent that. Better to take the turmeric with black pepper, by the way. It increases its efficacy tenfold. Ginger is very similar to turmeric, anti-inflammatory. I know you know about that. Cinnamon. Cinnamon is beautiful for lowering blood sugar. And if you lower blood sugar, because cancer loves sugar, you starve it and you don't allow the cancer to propagate. Cinnamon is also good for viral illnesses. They realized that the women in Sri Lanka who were harvesting the cinnamon bark never got flu and they never got the measles. We're always talking about vaccinations now. Cinnamon, high in vitamin A, can lower the risk of viral illnesses. And cardamom, what that does, it increases the amount of these white blood cells that go around looking for cancer. So all of those spices will help you with cancer. Beating diabetes. What thing can I tell you? Well, the most important thing, I think, apart from the diet, is immediately after you eat a meal, get up and go for a walk. Immediately. In fact, for the people who I help to reverse diabetes, I say, don't eat a meal until you're ready to go for a walk. You've got your trainers on, you're ready, you eat your meal, you get up, you go for a walk. Why do we say that? Well, when you eat and digest, even if it's a healthy meal, it gets broken down into sugar, the blood sugar will start to rise. So what we want to do is extract the sugar from the bloodstream, and if you're walking, you're using all your big muscles, they will absorb the sugar, lowering the blood sugar level, lowering your need for insulin. Therefore, you become more insulin sensitive again. Okay. Friendly fire. You know, I don't know if I mentioned it during the week. War is a tragedy. Death in war is a tragedy. But being killed by the people on your own team by mistake, that's a double tragedy. And we call that friendly fire. And that is what autoimmune disease is. It's when our antibodies, instead of destroying the bacteria, instead of destroying the virus, they start to destroy us. And they can destroy us anywhere in the body. Anywhere you have tissue in the body, 400 or more different tissues in the body, you can have antibodies to it. You know what I'm talking about, thyroid disease, arthritis. By the way, infertility comes into this, you know. You may know people who have, especially women who have difficulties conceiving. They spend thousands and thousands of trying to become fertile, IVF, but they never tell you what is the reason for the infertility. The biggest cause for infertility, especially in black women, is autoimmune. If you really want to get someone to get pregnant, try to reverse the autoimmunity in the system. It starts with a leaky gut. I won't go through all of that. Now, those proteins that we take in, if we have a leaky gut, they get into the bloodstream and our immune system identifies them as foreign. So what you need to do, the one thing I'm going to tell you to do, is to avoid milk products. Avoid milk products. In this study that you can see, they showed that children who have type 1 diabetes, that's an autoimmune disease, children who have type 1 diabetes had massive antibodies to bovine protein. Bovine proteins like milk, beef, all of that stuff. So avoiding milk will increase your chances of avoiding an autoimmune disease. I'm sure we don't have this problem in Kenya. We do? Okay, yes, I know we do. We have this problem in Kenya, we have this problem all over the world. In fact, let me tell you something. There are some people listening who think, well, I'm not overweight, I don't need to listen to this bit. Okay, I'm slim, I don't need to listen to this bit. I'll tune in when it comes to number 7. Well, that would be a mistake. You know, many of us who are slim have too much fat. Do you know that? In fact, many of us who are slim have the worst type of fat. Are you aware of that? Okay, let me explain. What you see here is what we call subcutaneous fat. You can see it on people, okay? And it's on the outside. But many of us, especially those people who you know, they eat unhealthily, but they rarely put weight on. You know those people? You know those annoying people? You know, you envy them. You should not envy them, because what they tend to have, if they're eating unhealthily, they're not exercising, and they're not putting on weight, it is because they are gaining lots of visceral fat. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. Visceral fat, you can't really see it. It surrounds the heart, it surrounds the kidneys, it increases your risk of cancer. So those people, we call them toffees, thin outside, fat inside. Toffee. Right. So if you thought you were going to go to sleep at this point, stay awake, because you're going to need to know how to reduce the amount of fat in your body, whether it's external or internal. And the one thing I'm going to tell you about is reducing the amount of sugar in your diet. That sounds simple. But really, sugar is the key, even more than fat and the amount that we eat. Sugar is the actual key. And I know it's difficult. You don't have to tell me. Look, let me tell you something. You may not know this about me. I have a big problem with sugar addiction. Did you know that? No. Do you believe me? I have a huge problem. I treat sugar like an alcoholic treats alcohol. If I eat something that's sweet, I find it very difficult to stop. Do you know the feeling? Well, I'm one of the worst. I remember one time I was at home and my mother came to visit and she brought me a cake. And I said to her, Mum, you know my problem. Why are you giving me a big cake? Well, she said, you know, sometimes you need a variety. I said, look, please, put it away. I don't want to see it because you know me. She put it in the fridge. All day I'm thinking about the cake. I go to bed, I'm thinking about the cake. I cannot sleep. How am I going to go to sleep? Well, maybe if I go downstairs and have a look at the cake, maybe that will satisfy me. Maybe if I take an extra thin slice of the cake, I can just eat it, taste it, and that's fine. Ladies and gentlemen, I finished the cake. I could give you more stories. I'm just trying to tell you that I'm in this with you. I'm not standing here lecturing to you as if I don't know what's going on. I know it's difficult. Me saying give up sugar is a difficult thing to do, which is why I came up with the Dr. Chidi method, right? The Dr. Chidi method. Anybody remember the Dr. Chidi method? Okay. The apple, they all remember the apple. Right. The Dr. Chidi method, named after some strange doctor. It says this, look, when you see the cake calling your name, the worst thing you can do, I think somebody's identifying with this, okay. The worst thing you can do is say, I must not eat the cake. If you say, I must not eat the cake, your body will just want it even more. We're all like that, right? We're like children. You tell a child, don't do this, that's what they want to do. In our psyche, we're like children. So the thing you do, you say, well, look, I will eat the cake. I will eat the cake, but I will eat it in half an hour. Even I can wait half an hour. At the same time, you eat an apple. The apple. That apple, you will digest it very slowly over half an hour. At that point of half an hour, you'll have enough sugar in your system to help overcome the desire for the cake. And if you still desire the cake, go for another apple for half an hour. So if you have 5 apples in a day, that's fine. That's good for you, okay? Now this works because, look, and I've done it myself, sometimes even Dr. Chidi fails the Dr. Chidi method. But I guarantee myself that I will still eat fewer cakes in one day than if I didn't do it. So you just try it, the Dr. Chidi method. And what does it stand for? It stands for don't resist it. Choose to have it, but delay it. Don't resist it. Choose to have it, but delay it. Okay, that's the Dr. Chidi method, and that's for sugar. Right. Now, we must not forget dementia. Some of you are awake. You must not forget dementia. Now, when I was at medical school, I think the most fearful disease we had was cancer. But I think that has been overtaken now by dementia. Dementia which takes away our memories, dementia which takes away our personality. There's some good news, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't know this for many years, but there is some good news. The good news is that dementia, first of all, it's a lifestyle disease. Many people are worried, oh, am I going to get dementia? My mother had it, my father had it, does that mean I'm... No, it's not genetic, but it is a lifestyle disease. And there are lots of things that contribute to it: stress, diet, all sorts of different things. But the one thing I'm going to give to you today on how you can reduce, even start to reverse, and that is eat more berries in your diet. Why do I say that? We know that in the early stages of dementia, when you're first getting the symptoms of dementia, your brain is becoming a little bit inflamed. Your nerves are becoming inflamed in your brain. That is starting to produce a lot of those symptoms. If you have a diet that is high in anti-inflammatories and antioxidants, I guarantee you, because it has been researched, and you can look it up, you can reverse up to 90% of the symptoms of dementia. You understand me? Up to 90% of the symptoms of dementia, if you consume enough things that can lower the inflammation and lower the oxidation. I refer to you the berries. Any berries, doesn't have to be any berries you like. They're full of antioxidants and anti-inflammatories. Now, stress and depression. We spoke about that yesterday. One thing I'm going to refer to you is getting practical help early so you get rid of the triggers. The triggers are not the causes for depression, the triggers are not the causes for stress, but if you can get rid of, or if you can help or get help early, you can learn to try to heal. Okay, now remember, at the heart of healing has to be forgiveness. Remember yesterday I said to you that disease is dis-ease. When we're not at ease, our body is really raging. Our body is never going to be at peace. Right. I want to say something else. I began by talking a little bit about COVID. I want to just share this with you. Well, you see, when COVID first came out, I was given the privilege of giving some evidence to the government, because in England, we realized that black people were dying at higher rates than white people. Okay? That wasn't happening in Africa or in the Caribbean, but in the West, in the Northern Hemisphere countries, those people who got COVID-19, black people were dying worse, and we wanted to find out why. So these were some of the statistics, you know. Let me show you this. Look, in America, 70% of the population, 70% of the deaths in Louisiana, for example, for only 30-something% of the population were black people. Okay, so what was the answer? They were asking, was it poverty? Was it racism? Was it conspiracy? Well, no, it was nothing that complicated. We realized that vitamin D levels, we already knew, can reduce infection rates. We knew that. We did an experiment even several years ago in the UK that showed if you have high vitamin D levels, you don't get symptoms of the flu. Here's an experiment from, I believe, Indonesia. The numbers of people who died from COVID were very few if you had normal levels of vitamin D. If you were deficient or insufficient in vitamin D, your rates of death went sky high. So what am I telling you? I'm saying we must always have enough vitamin D in the system. Okay, if you have vitamin D, you are able to overcome so many viruses, so many infections, so many insults. I'll say this also, men worried about prostate cancer. One of the biggest problems is we don't have enough vitamin D. Exercise and vitamin D. Okay, so in closing, let me go back to what I said yesterday. It is all about how you look. You have to look back with forgiveness. If you're ever going to look back, only look back with forgiveness. Make sure you look forward with hope, no matter where you believe you are. Remember, there are people around you, so look down with compassion. And always look up to the Lord with gratitude. So it's been my privilege to be with you all this week. I must say, it's wonderful to be back in Kenya, especially talking about this issue. You see, I believe, I was raised in Great Britain, I was born and raised in Great Britain, But I believe the healthcare systems of the West are really not what African countries should be going after. The healthcare systems of the West, they're bankrupting those countries. We have the resources in this country, here in Kenya, the people resources, the food resources, to generate a healthcare system that can lead to total and proper healing. What I've been talking about this week, I've just been highlighting how we can really prevent and cure people. In the West, they want to be driven by the pharmaceutical companies. I'm suggesting to you that in Africa, we can do something different. But maybe on my next visit, we can talk more. Until then, have a good night, and I wish you a good evening.